Over the weekend, DC fans learned about a bunch of new projects based on its comic book properties, including the first trailer for Matt Reeves' The Batman starring Robert Pattinson, and Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League, among many others. One of the most notable reveals for gamers was Gotham Knights by Warner Bros. Montreal. Unlike the studio's previous output with Batman Arkham Origins, Gotham Knights is an open-world co-op action RPG with multiple playable characters who fight enemies who bleed numbers and have levels above their heads. Now that sure sounds familiar. Clearly, this is DC's answer to Marvel's Avengers by Square Enix. The footage opened more questions than it really answered, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it isn't the game many of us were expecting after months of cryptic teases. The trailer was revealed with a CGI trailer explaining that Batman has left a message to his allies after his apparent death. Yeah, okay, sure, whatever you say, Bruce. This group, known as the Bat Family for those unaware, is composed of Batgirl, Nightwing, Robin, and Red Hood, among many other versions in the comics. These are all people who have trained with Batman and served as his sidekick in some way before venturing out on their own. Nightwing and Red Hood were also both Robins before adopting their current crime-fighting alter egos. In Batman's absence, Gotham's criminals have taken over the city, as they tend to do, and it's up to these four to restore order to Gotham. This is not a Batman game, which I think many of us expected, and honestly, I'm very happy with that. I've already got 4 awesome Batman Arkham games, so I'm glad he's not there, so someone else can have a chance. But there is no way that Bruce is actually dead. He's definitely just faked his own death to keep an eye on the Court of Owls. Now, I'll get to them in a sec. After the CG trailer, we actually got a bit of gameplay, which is great news and all but unheard of these days, which is precisely where my enthusiasm took a bit of a hit. We see Batgirl riding a motorcycle in an open world as she goes to apprehend Mr. Freeze. Sounds promising, right? At this point, Robin joins the session, controlled by another player, which is where the co-op element comes in. Now, I love a good bit of co-op, but the game can be fully played solo if you wish. However, it's not clear what that actually means anymore, as there are plenty of games you can technically play solo, but you'll definitely have a much worse time. One of the issues with co-op focused games, especially in an open world setting like this, is that storytelling often falls short and ends up being just a series of forgettable scenarios. Just look at the Mr. Freeze fight at the end of the demo. The fight with him in Arkham City is one of the best boss fights in all of gaming, as he adapts to your attacks. But this one looks like 1,000 other boss fights we've all done before and cuts out before we can really see anything. Hopefully the fight is more exciting beyond the few seconds that we actually did get to see. Apparently, as you level up and he levels up, his moves in the boss fights will get harder and more complex, so that does sound interesting, but I'm waiting to see it in execution. The sinister secret society beneath Gotham, the Court of Owls, is one of the principal antagonists in the game, and I'm worried that such an interesting villain is going to be squandered on a weak story. I don't know, maybe I'm just being paranoid, and I really hope I'm wrong because the Court of Owls are such an interesting idea. They're basically an Illuminati-esque secret society who's been living in Gotham for years and no one knows about them, and they know exactly who Batman is and how to take him down. The co-op functionality is only up to 2 players, which does lend itself a bit more to being able to play solo rather than full squad-based co-op. I should point out that most of the things I don't like about the game are actually just my presumptions and not anything confirmed. I still think on the whole it looks pretty decent because I love Batman stuff and even have 2 different Batman tattoos, but I still have my concerns. One thing I really don't like that this game shows is damage numbers and character levels. In my experience, it never feels like you're actually dealing damage to an enemy, as it just pisses out numbers and the health bar is chipped away. The Batman Arkham games have such incredibly smooth combat, and I'm worried that adding level gating completely breaks it. If I sneak up as a guy playing as a ninja trained for years by Batman himself, I expect him to go down, but if he's too high a level, that won't work, which just makes no sense. All this feels too artificial and it's just not my cup of tea. Maybe this is just a personal pet peeve, but that sort of combat has never really resonated with me. Again, maybe that isn't the case and the leveling is actually implemented well, but that remains to be seen. Honestly, if you can just switch the numbers and health bars off in the HUD settings, that problem is all but solved. But the implication with damage numbers is that gear grinding will be a thing. Gear and weapon progression was confirmed in a press release with a fact sheet about the game. Obviously, it's unclear to what extent that grind will be present, but we've seen it done so many times recently this generation, and so many times very poorly. With this game, I'm very much hoping for the best, but I'm prepared for the worst. The Arkham games are also really well known for their stealth sections, and the stealth in this demo lasts just a matter of seconds before it descends into an out-and-out brawl. Batgirl and Robin team up to take down enemies, which does look really great, and if you could find a good buddy to play with, I'm sure it will be brilliant, but again, I'm left wondering how it will play gameplay if you're alone? Will you get an AI companion, or is it just you by yourself? If the combat is half as enjoyable as the Batman Arkham games, then I will probably love it even with all the level-based gear grinding. Exploring an open world with these 4 very unique characters could be something really exciting if done right, especially as they all have their own traversal abilities and playstyles to take down bad guys. Nightwing uses 2 batons and is very acrobatic. Robin uses a staff and can teleport using a Wayne satellite, which doesn't really make sense, but okay. Red Hood uses pistols and isn't afraid to fight dirty, and Batgirl uses a tonfa weapon as well as a bunch of other gadgets. This game is definitely not connected to the Arkham games and exists in its own universe, so perhaps my comparisons are unfair, as the game is trying to be its own thing. While it is kind of a shame that this game doesn't follow on from the ending of Arkham Knight, it does give the devs free reign to create the game and story however they want and make it something really new and interesting. Basically everything I don't like about what I'm seeing here is the same as what I don't like about Marvel's Avengers, but I do actually like that game on the whole as a bit of casual dumb fun. My first impressions of Gotham Knights are a lot more positive than that of Avengers anyway, so at least that's a start. Despite my fears, for everything I dislike, there is something I really like, and I'm looking forward to playing this in 2021. The fact that these 4 characters are fully playable individually is really exciting to me, as this is something that the Arkham games massively dropped the ball on. Arkham Knight did have all of these characters playable, but only in challenges and in very short DLC expansions with none of the open world stuff. If done right, the drop-in drop-out co-op could be insanely fun to play as you tackle a mission as Red Hood, then call your buddy to bring in backup as Nightwing. I love the art style of the very dark Gotham with the bright coloured costumes, and I'm really excited to see what the Court of Owls have been up to. And again, there is no way Batman is dead, not a fucking chance. He's definitely hiding it to investigate the Court of Owls, at least when he's not busy caving bad guys' heads in.
I'm vengeance.
Gotham Knights wasn't the only game revealed during DC's fandom, as Rocksteady's new project, Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League, was officially unveiled with the CGI trailer but no gameplay. The game isn't coming out until 2022, so there's a long time to wait, and that could explain the lack of gameplay, but I'd say if you don't have gameplay, then why bother showing anything? These CG trailers are all well and good and can be very entertaining, but if you don't have gameplay, then what's the point? You're wasting my time. This trailer shows Superman's home Metropolis under siege by supervillain Brainiac. Brainiac is a super genius alien robot who has a penchant for shrinking cities and causing all kinds of carnage. While Metropolis is being attacked by Brainiac's iconic skull ship, we see Suicide Squad members Harley Quinn, Deadshot, King Shark, and Captain Boomerang loitering, waiting for their target to appear. The Suicide Squad is a team of DC supervillains who are recruited by the government while in jail to complete impossible missions in exchange for lighter prison sentences. Each of them has a tiny little bomb implanted in their heads so that they're forced to comply. After killing many of Brainiac's forces with their various unique skills and weapons, Superman himself shows up, and instead of being a beacon of hope and righteousness, he straight up lasers a guy.
You stay the f*** back or I'll laser you, goddammit! I'll laser every fucking one of you!
As the game's title would suggest, Superman and the rest of the Justice League are in fact the Suicide Squad's targets. Since Brainiac is known for mind control shenanigans, I'd wager he's the one controlling the League members, and that's why you've got to take him out. This trailer gives off a much more light-hearted tone than Gotham Knights, with bright colours and lots of humour. There's much less to say about this one based on the trailer since it is just CG with zero gameplay, but the devs did drop a few details. Firstly, while Gotham Knights exists in its own continuity, this game is connected to the Arkham series. I'm a huge fan of these character designs, especially King Shark with the traditional Samoan tattoos, but Deadshot is now black instead of white like he was in Arkham City and Origins, which is no doubt due to Will Smith's version of the character, but it still breaks continuity. This game is also a co-op open world title, but will be playable with 4 people to make a full squad. However, again, they stress that it can be played single player and that the other 4 members of the team will be controlled by AI bots, and you'll be able to swap between characters at will. That's a huge win to me, and is one of the biggest issues with Marvel's Avengers, as you can't switch characters mid-mission, although I really wouldn't be surprised if they made that a feature later on because a lot of fans are demanding it. The CG trailer seems to suggest that each character will have their own form of traversal, which is essential for an open world game. Deadshot has a jetpack, Harley Quinn has a grappling hook, Captain Boomerang has a teleporting boomerang for some reason, and King Shark can just leap great distances. In the panel led by Will Arnett, creative director Sefton Hill referenced gunplay and characters unlocking different weapons and abilities. Call me paranoid again, but this certainly could turn out to be another loot shooter, and while that's undeniably a very popular genre these days, it's not something I've ever been a fan of. It's unconfirmed whether either of these games will operate on a games as a service model, but from what I'm hearing about both being online focused, it sounds like it may be going down that path. Of course, that may not be the case, but Warner Bros. Has put games as a service elements in most of its recent games, sometimes to the detriment of the overall product, like microtransactions in Shadow of War, but sometimes fairly innocuously with games like Injustice 2 and Mortal Kombat, which already had extensive rosters and then added to it with DLC. As I said before, I'm a huge huge Batman fan and DC in general, so I'm definitely excited to see more about these games, but I definitely have some worries. We've seen so many games go down the games as a service path only to be total crap. I really hope that isn't the case, and this is just my paranoia. While both games do sound interesting, it does seem like a bit of a shame that both games are online co-op titles. Maybe the Suicide Squad gameplay will be different enough to make it feel distinct, otherwise it's a total waste, making the only two new DC games pretty much the same thing. I know I'm a little late to covering these titles as they were revealed on Saturday, but I wanted to take the weekend to solidify my thoughts, but I'm still not even sure how I feel about it now, to be honest. I do feel like I've been a bit harsh on these games, especially since we know so little about them, but the core concepts do have me really intrigued. A game all about the Bat family without Batman is something I've wanted for years, and a game about the Suicide Squad doing the impossible task of killing Superman sounds really interesting. Anyway, what do you think? Are either of these games lighting your bat signal, or do you share my games as a service fears? Honestly, I want to be more excited, so please try to convince me or tell me any info I've missed out. Leave a like, hit subscribe, donate on Patreon if you're feeling really generous. I've been Henry Cooper, this has been Pretty Good Gaming. Bye for now.